Have you ever had one of those panicked situations where you've left your knitting somewhere? You just about got to see a knitting loss related meltdown live on camera a few minutes ago, but it's all been resolved. I'll see you on the other side. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a Craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I am a knitter and a crocheter, and every couple of weeks I come to this corner of YouTube to show you what I've been working on and to give you some ideas on how that you can combine your love of crafting with doing a little bit of good in the world. You can find me on social media, on Instagram as Gary Knits, Gary Rides, and over on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides. Hope everyone is doing well. It is the season. It is jam-packed with things going on. And even though we don't really do much in terms of celebrating for the winter holidays around here, it still feels like there are a ton more activities and things to do than usual. So, as I mentioned up front, I just had a little bit of a panic attack. Something that I was going to show is missing. I can't find it. And I just made a call to the library where I have my Italian lessons on Monday. So I'm recording this on Tuesday, the 17th. So yesterday afternoon I had one of my Italian lessons, and it's at a library that's sort of equidistance between my teacher and myself, and so we meet there in a study room. And because I usually get there a little early, I usually take some knitting, and we ran over yesterday afternoon and in a bit of a panic for making sure that my teacher got onto her next appointment, since I had taken up more than my fair share of her time. I guess I left the little bag of knitting in the room. I packed up all my books, and so I just called, and in fact, that is where it is. So after I record this, I'm going to have to jump in the car, and it's about an hour and a half round trip to the library, but I don't feel like waiting for a whole week because that's a week lost on that project. So you will not be seeing that project this week, but I have some other things to show you, and we're going to talk a little bit about intentions heading into 2025, mainly crafting related, but some other stuff as well. So like I said, I hope you're well. I hope you're finding a little time in the rush and craziness of the winter holiday season to take some time for knitting or crafting, crocheting, whatever it is you do for yourself, and just take a little bit of a break. The last couple of weeks, as I mentioned, it has been chock-a-block with activities. We had our first LA Philharmonic concert of the season. It was 2 Brahms pieces, a violin concerto, and a symphony, I think. It was actually quite good. I don't know a lot. Well, I'm not at all an expert on classical music, full stop, but Brahms, least of my knowledge is Brahms. So it was a very nice program. It was Zubin Mehta, who's like 88 years old and still out there doing it. And it was a really nice show. And I met a fellow knitter at intermission. I was walking around. I was wearing my Stephen West painted honeycombs sweater because it was a little cool here, and I was wearing that, and a woman walked up to me at intermission and was like, did you knit that? Are you a knitter? Is it a Stephen West design? We exchanged Ravelry names, so it was very cool to get to meet a fellow knitter And she said that she had also bumped into another person that she had seen knitting in the audience. I always take some knitting with me to work on before the show and during intermission. So that was fun. And then several of my knitting groups over the last week or so have had our little holiday festivities. So I'm part of a group that meets generally at a local wine bar. So it's called the South Bay Drunken Knitters. And we had a little white elephant gathering at a local tea shop where they had done a very traditional tea with the 3-tiered little plates and finger sandwiches and some sweets and things like that. And then we did a little white elephant, which was fun. I ended up with a Tufts woolen bar of sock soap, which was lovely, and a stitch marker, as well as some stickers. But all of the gifts, there were probably I think there were 12 or 13 of us there. They were all sort of knitting related, so that was a lot of fun. And my other local library knitting club had a potluck after our knitting time at the library, and we invited the librarians, and so that was a lot of fun as well. And then I did another. We had another white elephant kind of party with some friends. This one was done a little bit differently than what I'm used to. So you bring 3 of the identical gifts, and her theme every year is always favorite things. So they're always supposed to be something that's your favorite thing. And so you bring 3 of those, and so you leave with 3 presents, which is kind of fun. And for my favorite things, 2 years ago when we went, I knit dishcloths, and there was something else I put, and some candy that I like. And then this year I took soap from Molly at Optimistic Soap Co. So I took one of her holiday soaps and then paired it up with one of my favorite scents from her. And so there were 2 bars of soap that folks got. So it was a lot of fun. And then the other thing we did was we, very late in the game, went to go see Wicked. So we missed it on the big screen and the 3D and all that. So we just saw it at a regular schmegular movie theater, and it was fun. It's I think not my favorite musical, but I thought it was really well done, and the art direction was amazing, and I thought the performances were really good. So that was fun. I can't believe we have to wait a whole nother year for the second half. Although, to be fair, the second act of Wicked is not as strong as the first. So we'll see. Hopefully they can do something fun. But I think the cast is great. So that's kind of been what's going on. Went over to my folks' house. My dad sings in his community's chorus. And so they had their Christmas show. We went over there and had dinner with them. And we'll go see them for Christmas Day. The place they live has a buffet that they do every year for Christmas. So that will be basically our entire Christmas celebration. We'll be going over with my in-laws and having lunch with my parents, and we'll be all wrapped up in time to get home well before dark. So it should be very low key. Fingers crossed. The most excitement in the next couple weeks is going to be me having to run to the library to pick up my knitting bag. But we do have a couple other fun things coming up. We're going to go see Once Upon a Mattress the day after Christmas. That's with Sutton Foster and Michael Urie here in LA. It was on Broadway earlier this year, and yeah, so that should be a great little cap off to to Christmas. In terms of Craftivism, there's not a lot that I've seen going on in my feeds over the past couple of weeks in terms of fundraisers and things like that. I think that people are really wrapped up with the holidays, and all of that sort of stuff will probably pick up again in the new year. But one thing that I did want to bring to your attention, I can't believe I missed this earlier on, but you may know, it's a little bit outside of the my world of crafting because it's cross stitch, but Shannon Downey, who is on Instagram as the Badass Cross Stitcher, she does amazing cross stitch slogans and really fun things, often with a political bent to them. She has a new book that is out called Move the Needle, which is all about Craftivism. I do know that a copy of it was picked up for me for the holidays by someone, so that's going to be cool. I'm going to get to see that and check out that book here in the next couple weeks. But she is doing an online workshop as part of a series of online workshops. And I'm not sure exactly who was coordinating the whole thing. I came across it kind of randomly, but it was a whole series of workshops post-election on kind of how do I take action where I am, both sort of physically and kind of where I am mentally. And so on the 7th of January, and I'll put the link down below along with everything I'm going to talk about today. Here is a QR code. If you're not watching this on your device, you can scan that and go right to the show notes. She is doing a 90-minute workshop on kind of the whole theme of her book, Move the Needle, activism for artists and crafters and creatives and other makers, and just kind of going through her philosophy and sort of ideas on action and things that you can do. And so that's going to be on the 7th of January, 3:30 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, so a little bit later on the East Coast. Links down below. I think it's a free event, and there are, I think, at least one or two more in this series that have gone on. I'm kind of bummed that I missed some of the earlier ones, but I'm going to try to tune in for that. So if you are having a couple hours on, I don't even know what day of the week that is, but in the evening, go check that out. I know they're not recording it. It's going to be on Zoom, but they're not recording it, so you have to be able to do it in person. I do believe there is going to be ASL interpretation of it while it's going on. So I think that should be really cool. She's great. If you're not following her, the Badass Cross Stitcher on Instagram, she has a great feed. Go check her out. The other thing I wanted to mention, it's not really craftivism, but we are in the final couple of weeks of my Go West knit along. So this was a knit along that we started back in October, kicking off with the Stephen West mystery knit along, but for folks who didn't want to do the mystery knit along but wanted to work on a Stephen West project kind of in the final 3 months of the year. So that is wrapping up. We're going to finish that up on December 31st. I have 2 more winners. So I've been trying to pull names from folks who are using the Go West KAL hashtag on Instagram, or who are posting photos of their whips and FOs in the Ravelry thread for Gary Knits, Gary Rides. There's a Ravelry thread dedicated just to the knit along. You still have a couple of weeks. Post more pictures, and you'll get entered into some drawings. So last time I had one of my winners had previously won something recently from me, not related to the KAL, but I think from naming the KAL actually. And she said, well, can I pay it forward and pick another name? So I have one paid forward name and then one name for this week. So the 2 winners are Sheila MC over on Ravelry, and I will reach out to her on Ravelry because I'm not sure if she watches the show or not. And then the other one is Valerie Voigt, Sheila, and I'm assuming that's your name, because it's in your name, but she was working on and finished the Follow Your Path hat, which is really cool. I had not been aware of that Stephen West pattern, but it's really cool looking. Looks like it's slip stitch kind of patterns. And then Valerie Voigt was working on the painted bricks hats. I think she made a couple of those, very similar to my painted honeycombs sweater, but a squared off version of it where the bricks actually have a kit, like an actual kit from early in the pandemic that I got from my local yarn store when they were shut down but doing stuff online, and she put together kits for the painted bricks shawl. That may be something that needs to come out this year. Anyway, we're going to be talking about knitting plans in a minute. But Valerie Voigt was working on a couple of the painted bricks hats, or painting bricks. I can't remember which one it is. So if you see this, reach out to me. I know where to find you, and we will get you a skein of yarn as your prize. So there's going to be, I think, one more weekly prize to be given, and then on the 31st, I'm going to throw in, basically just go through everyone, whether you've won or not. and pick a grand prize winner. I don't know exactly what the prize is going to be, but it'll be something more than just a skein of yarn. So still time to enter. Every photo you post is an entry. I would say your best chance is over on Ravelry, because Instagram is being lame with hashtags. In fact, the whole being able to follow a hashtag is going to go away at some point, if it hasn't already gone away as well. So we're going to probably have to migrate most giveaway stuff over to Ravelry, or do it here directly on YouTube. So Sheila and Valerie, reach out to me and we will arrange getting you your prizes. In terms of the knitting, as I mentioned, one of my whips is stuck at the library. Those are my socks for my sister-in-law, the Otter Pop Disco stripe colorway from Always Be Kind yarn. And I'm just doing a plain vanilla heel flap and gusset top down sock. I am through the heel turn and onto the foot. I'd have to look. My guess is I probably have another 4 inches or so to knit on those. I'm trying to go back and forth between 2 projects that have somewhat self-imposed deadlines, but they're both gifts, and so I would like to get them done and get them to the recipients. Those socks have been long gestated because that yarn came out in the summertime, and I think I probably cast on sometime in August or September. So they've been kind of slow going because I've been working on, as you know, baby blankets for days and days and days, and now another blanket as well. So I'm trying to swap between those, and I would like to get them done by the end of the year. And I think I could probably get that done if those are my car travel, sitting in the symphony, sitting in the theater, knitting projects, and I think if I just buckle down, I'll be able to get those wrapped up and get them off to her. So that's one of the whips. I guess we'll do whips first since we're talking about them, and then I can talk about the one FO I had. The other big project that is taking most of my time, and you will have seen it before, but I've made a lot of progress since last time I showed it. I think I did show it last episode, but I've probably knit about 8 or 9 inches on it. So this is the Kurdock blanket pattern from Carol Feller, who is Stolen Stitches is the brand that she uses. And this is, I think it was a club, she does a blanket club, I think, every year. And I think this was like the 2020 or maybe 2022 blanket club that she did. My friend, it's a much belated housewarming present for a friend of mine. She picked out the pattern. I had given her, 24 patterns that I said, I would be interested in making. And she picked this one, and then we picked the yarn. It is, it's called Quaker Hill. I can't remember. It'll all be in the show notes. It's a 50-50 alpaca and wool blend, and it's been pretty good to work with. It's a little splitty, I will say, and it's alpaca, so it sheds quite a bit. So I'll just have to tell her that don't be wearing your black PJs on the couch you're snuggling up with this, because they'll end up looking like you have a cat. But this is a really, really fun pattern, even though I am, just at the halfway point in terms of finishing it. I've never really gotten bored with it. I've had a couple of problems where I made mistakes and I've had to tink back. And these are very long rows, so that takes some time. But I'm still on track with this. Speaking of not wearing black and holding up against me, if I can do 6 rows a day, that's about an inch of work a day. I will be able to have this finished by her birthday, which is in late January, and I think that'll be a nice natural gifting point. I think I'm going to be seeing her a couple weeks after that, and I will be able to hand it off then fully blocked and all that. So really fun pattern. If you haven't been following along with it, I think there are 10 total 10 distinct cable charts. And they're kind of mirrored. So my guess is there's, more like 21 pattern motifs as you go across. But I have a system. It seems to be working. It involves all these colored stitch markers and a big poster board that has all the charts on them. Each one is color coded, and I keep track of which row I'm on by keeping track of which row I am on this center motif, which is the largest. It's a 36 row repeat. The rest are 6s and 12s, and then one is in every little teeny tiny twist in here is in every other row. And so I'm able to keep track with that using one of these twice sheared sheep chain row counters. So that seems to be working pretty well. And again, I'm having a lot of fun with this project. And hopefully in a month's time, I will be just about at the end. I'm going to have to, it looks like I'm going to have, I probably bought an extra skein of yarn. And so it looks like I'm going to have some extra yarn, and then I have to decide whether I just want to keep going and do like another 6 or 7 inches longer than what the pattern calls for. I just don't know if the proportions will look weird. It's about 40 inches across, and I think you're supposed to knit it 50. So I don't know if like 58 or 60 is going to make it look like too long and skinny relative to the width. But we'll see when we get down to kind of the right size. We'll see if how that feels. So that is one of the whips. The other long going whip is my entry into the Go West knit along. It is the Botanic Shawl by Stephen West, and I am not going to finish this in time to finish the KAL. I will just say that now. That's going to be okay. I am not working on this nearly as much as I would like, because I've kind of put the 2 gifting projects on the front burner, because I would like to get those done and get those handed off to the recipient. So this is really only getting worked on here and there at my Thursday knitting group, because working on all those cable charts is kind of cumbersome to carry around with me. Once the socks are done, this will become my car knitting. But here it is. This is a very, very simple, mindless, I hate to say mindless, because it, that makes it sound like it's just didn't take any thought in designing it, and that's not the case. But it is a project that I can work on and watch TV or listen to an audiobook or something like that. It does not require an intense amount of concentration. You really just have to remember that some rows are stockinette, some rows are garter, and then you have slip stitches every so often. I think in terms of the number of repeats, I'm well over halfway. Obviously, it's getting longer and longer, so each repeat is taking longer and longer. But I'm still in the first skein of both the main color and the contrast color. The main color here is Urban Girl Yarns, both fingering weights, 2 color fingering weight shawl, designed to be used with color changing yarn, although one of the folks in the knit along is just doing it with a variegated yarn. It looks fantastic as well. And I mean, you could even do it with two solids. It would just be stripy, although this is plenty stripy as well. So my 2 yarns are fingering weight. Urban Girl Yarns is the main color, that's the solid. The colorway is Allentown, and the color changing yarn is a Knit Picks Chroma fingering, and the colorway is Sandpiper. As you can see, not a super high contrast choice on my part. I think that is going to be great for me, but these blues and grays are going to be very, very wearable for me. And then I do like that there's just a little bit of a, color pop with the cream and the lavender in there. So, once the socks get done, this will get a little more attention. It's the last of my big whips. We're going to talk a little bit about whip management in 2025 here in a minute, but that'll be the big whip to get off my plate. So I'm hopeful that by, let's say, MLK Day, that I will have that wrapped up and off the needles, and then can begin to kind of focus on the plans for 2025. The only other whip that I have was a new cast on. If you recall, last time I talked about having purchased one of these, and I got the name from the designer, Hat Bee Creations, and she calls it Yarn on the Go, I think. Yarn to Go. I said I got the name, but it's like Yarn to Go is what she calls these. And she had these at her booth at SoCal Fiber Fair. It was like a bar situation where you got to pick your strap, pick your spindle, pick your base. And I said that I was going to use this for trying to start walking and knitting, to sort of incorporate more walking into my healthy lifestyle routine. I don't know, the days that I'm not at the gym. And so I've been able to do that, not as often as I would like, but it worked out really well. And so I cast on this citrus hat by Laura Treadway. I've made this before. It is a great, simple hat, great for charity knitting. And I am using leftovers from my Clapotis. This is the Lolabean Yarn Co. Aran weight in the Wakabi colorway. I think I had about 50 grams. I made it into, this hat is very stretchy because it's ribbing all the way around. So I knit the smaller size. This is going to be a hat for me, or that was the plan anyway. We'll see if it's too small, it'll go into the charity pile, but I would like to have it for myself. I think 50 grams is going to be enough, but we shall we shall see. If I get down to the end, we may need to find some blue or olive or orange yarn, and it's just going to have a little crown that's a different color. But this is Citrus Hat, Laura Treadway, who I believe is Treadling on Instagram. It's a great fast hat. I think she uses worsted weight. This is like a heavy worsted, so I think that's one of the other reasons I cast on the smallest size, is because I figured it'll be a little bit bigger with the bigger yarn. So those are all of the things that are being actively worked on right now. I thought we would talk a little bit about, I've started going through and laying out my plans for 2025, knowing full well that they will probably change over time. But I always do like to go into each new year with kind of a queue set up on the things that I think that I'm going to work on. And my plan is to kind of finish that process up over the sort of quiet time during the holidays, and be able to share that with you on the next episode. But this time I thought I would talk more broadly just about, rather than specific projects, but just sort of broader intentions for 2025, both crafting related and life related. And again, I have tended to start using intentions rather than resolutions because it sounds a little less rigid. And given just life and what's going on in the world right now, things could change very, very quickly in any number of ways. And so I like the idea of intentions that, have a little bit more malleability to them. But the first one is pretty is pretty rigid because it is no new blankets. Which may be hard if there's surprise baby announcements along the way, but I kind of been thinking about it, and I don't know anyone that might be having more babies this year that I haven't heard about yet, but we'll see. Again, that could change, but maybe they'll get booties in a hat instead of a blanket. I think having 3 blankets going at the same time in the second half of this year really was a weight that totally self-imposed, but it just didn't give me a lot of time to knit for myself or knit on projects that I was super interested. I tried to pick blanket projects that were going to be new skills or things that the brioche blanket, I really wanted to do a brioche project, so that sort of scratched that itch. The crochet blanket was a lot of new crochet techniques, so that was great. But having big projects like that, like the Kurdock blanket here, having multiples of those just really limits your ability, or at least limited my ability to kind of work on anything else. And so no new blankets is the first intention for 2025. I'm going to finish this. I will talk about a whip that I have that's been, it's probably 2 years sitting there, that is a throw that, but it's just for me, and so there's no real time pressure on when and if that gets finished in 2025. But that does bring up the next sort of intention, and that is sort of thinking about whips. And I think for the whips that I have, that you've seen, things that have been put way, way back on the back burner, I'm going to try to make a call early in the year to either frog those or finish those. I counted 5 that I know of that I can think of off the top of my head. And maybe next time what I'll do is walk through each of those and kind of hopefully at that point have a decision on where we're headed with those, whether they're going to be frogged or finished or let's not say finished, but well, most of them, the blanket one may not be a finish, but that is going to be at least continued to be work. Progress will be made on them all but that one finished in the new year. So I'll bring those out and we can kind of walk through those and see where we are and kind of my thought process on those. The third intention is really kind of ties into crafting, but is more just general lifestyle thing, and it has to do with social media use, footprint, etc. I would say that the big theme there is more Ravelry, less Zuckerberg. So I really have tried over the last month or so to limit how much social media I'm consuming, which also means how much social media I'm putting out there, specifically Instagram and Facebook. And I would like to continue to shrink that going forward. I just don't feel like contributing to Mark Zuckerberg's thing, given his recent actions. But it has been a big part of sort of what I've done in terms of Craftivism and all the AIDS life cycle stuff that I did. And so it's been an important part of that. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of balance those things out. What I have done, more recently is imposed, just through a app on the phone, is limiting my usage of those apps for a big chunk of the day, so that it's basically shut down. I can get to it if I absolutely need it, but it's just a sort of another hurdle to get through before I could get there for a big chunk of the daytime hours, and trying to focus my attention on doing something that's actually useful. In terms of just more broadly, I'm going to continue this channel for the next year. I think that's pretty clear. I would like to continue to do this. It may be more of my main outlet for putting content out there. But I do continue to enjoy finding Craftivism ideas and bringing them, shedding a little light on them, and hopefully spreading the word a little bit about them. So I will be continuing to do that. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more on Ravelry. One, because some of the changes on Instagram has made doing giveaways and things like that really annoying. But two, it also ties into another one of my intentions, which has to do with sort of planning and being better about keeping track of the projects I'm working on and what the yarn I used and all that stuff. And so all that happens, or at least it happens for me, on Ravelry. So I spent some time over the last couple of weeks just updating projects that have been sitting there on Ravelry as whips, but they've been FOs for months. And so getting pictures up and getting my project queue sort of starting to line up for next year. So just spending more time on Ravelry. I think I will try to be more active in terms of putting up threads related to the podcast if we're working on a knit along or something, having more activity there, probably less focus on Instagram and definitely on Facebook. I mean, I think that probably what's going to happen is my Facebook, which is not really tied to my Instagram. So, I mean, it is, but it's not as accessible to the general public. But that'll probably dwindle to just about nothing. And then over the year, I think, start to slowly reduce my footprint on Instagram as well. So that's kind of a crafting adjacent, but more just sort of like trying to free up some time and spend my time doing more quality things than doom scrolling through various apps that are just basically funding the people that are the problem in the current situation. So the fourth one is definitely crafting related. I wrote it down here as always be hooking, but it really speaks to my desire to always have at least one crochet project going at a time. It's something that I've talked about in the past that I would want to get better at crochet. I'm definitely not as strong a crocheter as I am a knitter. And just, I think by always having at least one crochet project on the hooks, that the hope is that is what will help me feel like I'm becoming a stronger crocheter. So I do have, I think the next project I start in the new year, and one that I'll talk about next time, is going to be a crochet project. It's kind of a fun little project, and it kind of ties into some things that are going to be going on in the next year for us. So expect to see the next non-walking project be a crochet project for me. And I have a couple of, I'm trying to think, at least 3 crochet projects kind of vying for a spot in the list for plans for next year. So that is always be hooking. That is always to have at least one crochet project on the hooks throughout the year. Kind of tied to that, but a separate one that I'm putting is to do one Tunisian crochet project this year. It's been probably over a year and a half, 2 years since I've done a Tunisian crochet project. I did the lacy shawl by Steph Made that a couple years ago, and that was my first and only Tunisian crochet project. A woman in my my local library knitting crochet group is working on a Tunisian crochet project right now, and I had turned her on to Toni Lipsey. She got her book, and so she's working on a baby blanket, and I was like, I need to pick up my Tunisian crochet hooks again and work on something. So I'm going to go through, and this will get to the very next intention. I think I have one of Tony's projects kitted up somewhere, the Loveland shawl. I can't remember whose yarn. It may be Ken yarn. but I think I have that kitted up somewhere, and that might be the one that gets done. It kind of also scratches like do another shawl itch. But I would like to do at least one Tunisian crochet project this year. Mentioning the kits, one of the big projects for me this year is going to be a big yarn purge. So kind of looking ahead to the next, this is several years down the road probably, but the next round of downsizing for us. And space has started to become a problem with the yarn. And so the last couple of years I've tried to work more from stash. I always end up still buying yarn. I think I was probably down last year, down 2023, probably flat to up this year in 2024 in terms of like stuff going out versus stuff coming in. 2025 is definitely going to be a big stuff going out year. So a couple of things are going to be happening. One, I'm going to go through my stash and refill the giveaway piles rather than buying new stuff for that. And then there is going to be at least one Destash for good coming. I have a bunch of stuff from third parties for that already. For the first one, I'm going to get rid of that, get that stuff sold to raise money for AIDS Life Cycle, as I have done in the last couple of years. And then I'm going to go through my own stash. My goal is to get rid of 50% of the yarn I have. So that is going to require me going through all of the kits that I have, all the stuff that's already been had patterns picked out for it, really going through those and deciding, is this something I really want to make? Is this something that I just decided to make a kit for because I bought this yarn and said I had to have a project for it? If it's not something that I'm like absolutely dying to make, that'll get put into the destash pile. And then I'm just going to go through the rest of my yarn, and anything that wasn't a gift or is tied to a specific project is up for being cut. And I'm hoping, getting rid of 50% is a pretty big task, because I don't want to like get rid of stuff that I really, really like. But as I said, space is becoming an issue and is only going to get worse as we think about downsizing in the future. So I'm just kind of trying to plan ahead of that. So the bad part about that is I think I'm going to have to, I'm not going to say end, but I'm going to have to put a pause on the clubs that I'm in and really, really not buy yarn unless there's a specific project that I am eminently starting. So I have yarn that just came in this week, but that is for a project that is going to be started right after the new year. So there are two projects that I have are definitely in the queue that needed specific yarn for them, and so I will buy that yarn. But just the going to a show and buying the show color, and I love supporting my indie dyer friends and their small businesses, but the time has come to sort of have the reverse, put the card in reverse, and have some of that yarn go out of the house. And some of that's going to happen through projects, but a lot of that's going to happen through straight up purging and destashing, and using that the funds from that to for this final AIDS life cycle. Even though I'm not a writer, but I'm still raising money for it. So that's going to be a fun project, because I love to go through all the yarn and stuff, but a little bit of sadness as well, because I'm going to have to get rid of some things that I probably like. A non-crafting related, but sort of, because it ties into my goal of walking, is more books. So this was a really weak year in terms of me reading. I mean, also I include audiobooks in that. I did when I was training for my bike ride, I was able to listen to some audiobooks. But subsequent to that, I really don't know that I finished anything recently in the last few months. I started a new book with my walking, The Great Believers. I can't remember who the author is. So far, really enjoying it. It sucked me in immediately, so that's a great sign. But I really want to, I'm not going to put any numbers on it, at least yet, but I just want to be more active on the reading front. And I'm hoping that one of the things that sort of taking time away from social media is going to allow me to do is to have a little more time to read. A lot of that's still going to be audiobooks, especially while I'm still working on these deadlined projects, because I just feel like I can't take the time to like sit and actually sit down and read a book, that I have to be multitasking, which is a whole other issue. But that's the goal. Is I have a ton of books that I would like to read, and I'm going to try to make a little more time for them from this year. The other thing I want to try, and this is all sort of inspired by a recent episode of the Pearls and Polish podcast. So Rachel over at Pearls and Polish did this episode a couple weeks ago before her Vlogmas started on her planner. And it's not just a knitting planner, although a lot of what it is a knitting planner. And it was a very specific, and I forget, something Cousin. It's a Japanese company that makes them. But she walked through in a lot of detail how she uses her planner, and she showed her one from this year and then sort of how she was setting up the one for next year. And it just was so amazing and really inspiring in terms of like, I've often thought about like trying to do more of a yarn or knitting, crafting notebook. I started using during the whole Knit Stars process and the design process for both the hat and scarf that Lewis and I did last year about this time, and then all the stuff that went into my Knit Stars class. I started using a notebook, and I just had a basic, got this in Ireland at the Guinness storehouse. I used this as sort of, how I went through the design process of my hat and scarf with all the different prototypes and things that went into it. And I found that really helpful, but I sort of just on a day-to-day basis have never gotten into kind of like the planning things out, but I would really like to give that a shot. So I'm going to go back and watch that episode again. I don't know if I'm ready to make the investment into the amount of time that she puts into hers, but I reached out to her and she said, start simple. So if anyone is a planning enthusiast, planner enthusiast, any tips that you might have, drop them down in the comments below. One thought I had was I barely made it a quarter of the way through this. It's just a blank notebook. I feel like it needs like a little more structure to it than that, but this may be a good starting off point. I also have this, sorry for the rattling. It's like this A5 3-ring binder that I was gifted. And I was looking earlier on Amazon, and they have sets with like, month at a glance, week at a glance, all sorts of different inserts that you can get to for this, as well as blank pages. And I thought that might be a good first foray into this. I don't think I'm going to be ever the guy who's like with the stickers and the washi tape and all that stuff, but I do like the idea of like color-coded pens to like track different things, mostly around projects and what I'm working on, but just as a central place. So if anyone has any tips, thoughts on whether a blank notebook, how you might use that versus one that has a little bit more structure to it, the comment section and DMs and emails are all open for that. So, but I would like to try to be a little more thoughtful and organized around my knitting and planning. And I just feel like part of me is it's just one more thing to have to do, but part of me is I think that having it all in one place will help me in my goal of also keeping Ravelry up to date and all that stuff. So thoughts, please let me know. The ninth thing is just a little bit of like numbers and kind of without getting into specific projects because I don't have them picked out yet, but I would like to do 2 sweaters this year. I didn't do a sweater last year. I've only ever made myself one sweater. I know that one of those two sweaters is going to be a very basic navy blue cardigan. I'm working from the Amy Herzog book, which is basically like all the different sweater constructions. Pick a gauge, and she has the sort of pattern laid out for you. So I know it is going to be a set-in sleeve, I think, basic navy blue cardigan. The second sweater, I have no idea. I have plenty in my Ravelry queue. I don't know if it's going to be a colorwork sweater. I don't know if it's going to be a basic crew neck. Something I would just like to do more. We don't wear a lot of sweaters, so it all has to be lightweight, which means it's all going to be like fingering or sport, maybe DK. So they're all going to take a little bit longer than if I was doing worsted weight sweaters. But I would just like to be a little more conversant and experienced in construction of sweaters, because not oftentimes, but it's happened several times where I'm at like knitting group and someone's working on a sweater and they're like, "Oh my gosh, can you help me? I have a question." And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking. I have no idea how to help you, because I've literally only ever made one sweater for myself. So I just like to have a little more experience on the sweater front. So 2 sweaters, 3 pair of socks, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I'm such a slow sock knitter. And I'm also counting in there using sock tubes I have and just putting heels, toes, and cuffs on them. But I think socks have been part of an intention for the last 2 or 3 years, and I just continue to want to be a faster, more prolific sock knitter, and I don't know how to do it except to just keep putting it in there that it's gonna happen. Just will it to be so. And then 10 hats for charity. I would say 10 hats in general. Maybe 1 or 2 of them would be for me, but like I would like to get 10 hats for Knit the Rainbow or hats for sailors or someone done. I have a whole bin of yarn that's all kind of worsted and higher that is for charity knitting. And one of the ways to help me clear space from the yarn is going to be knitting a bunch of hats out of that bin. There'll be other projects down the road, but these were the kind of the 3 numbers. So 2 sweaters, 3 socks, 10 hats, kind of goalposts for as I think about the queue for 2025. And the last one that I had was more on techniques. So things that I would like to try. I feel like I've done, certainly not every knitting technique there is out there, but like I've done, mosaic, and I've done stranded color work at this point. I've done a little bit of intarsia, not a lot of intarsia, but so I feel like I've at least dipped my toe in a lot of different techniques. But a couple that I think some of these are very, very specific. Some of the things that one is I want to be, this gets back to the sock, try to figure out a faster sock technique. And I see Michael from Piece for Piece, like feels like every single week he has a new pair of socks. And he does toe up 2 at a time with a cut-in heel. So he's basically just, once he gets past the toe, it's just a tube. He knows where to mark, and then he goes back and adds the heels in later. So I want to try that as a way of maybe speeding up the process. I did that big long tube that Sophia Talley's book outlines, and that was okay. But I want to try this 2 at a time toe up marking for the heels, and I just need to go. I think he has a couple of tutorials on how he does it, and I just need to kind of get that process more ingrained in my head, because I do feel like if it was just round and round and round and round and round, that's a great project too. And maybe it doesn't have to be 2 at a time. I don't know. I just feel like that's the way I'm going to complete them. So that's one, is I want to figure out Michael's technique on how he knits his socks so fast and see if I can replicate that, even if it's much, much slower. The other thing is more color work. I do want to do more color work. Specifically, I bought the Woolly Wormhead short row color work book earlier this year, and I'd like to try that out. Valerie Voigt, who I mentioned earlier, has worked on one of the hats, and it turned out great. And so I would just like to kind of explore that book a little bit. And then the other color work, which is not a technique, but because it's just stranded color work, but I've invested a lot of not a lot, but I've invested money in like a lot of doodle decks and the doodle book, and I have some yarn picked out for a doodle project, and so I would finally like to jump on the doodle bandwagon and do a doodle project this year. Fish Lips Kiss Heel for pairs of socks. Again, another sock technique, but I've been wanting to try it for a while. I think the next pair of socks that I do for myself, I'm going to try that heel. If anyone has any tips, let me know. And then the other thing, which is just not really a technique, but I would like to, I've never done like a scrappy project, and I think it's going to probably be a hat. So I'm going to just try, like, I have a ton of scraps and more every year, and just to do like a fun, like, take all my little bits and bobs that I can find and just make a fun scrappy hat. So very simple technique, but something new to try. So those are just the kind of top 10 things that I have put together in terms of intentions for 2025. As I mentioned, my intention for the next episode right before the new year is to spend a little time walking through my queue. I mean, I'm going to bring out the whips. We're going to make a decision on frogging them or finishing them, and then kind of walk through the 10 or so projects that are at the top of my list to do for 2025. If I'm really ambitious, I will also try to pull out the yarn that I'm hoping to use for those, to the degree that I've actually thought I had enough to pick out. Maybe as part of this purge process, because I'm going to try to go through maybe not all the yarn I have, but at least the stuff that's been kitted up already, because that's, I mean, there's probably those file box sized plastic tubs. There's probably 10 of those. And so I don't know, that's probably 100 skeins of yarn at least in there. So go through those and kind of cull what doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe through that process, I'll be having some inspiration on some of the projects that go into my queue. So stay tuned for that if that's fun. I always love hearing what everyone's sort of plans are for the year ahead, and we just don't go back at the end of the year and see how we did. We just sort of assume that most of what we wanted to get done, we got done. Before I wrap up, it's been I said there's a couple of some yarn that has come in for specific projects that I will talk about next time. The only other acquisition I have, and again, this is one that's going to be sad to like stop doing, but I got my latest and maybe last for a while Lolabean Yarn Co. Black Label yarn. This one was the December colorway inspired by Tyler, the creator. It's called Hey Jane, and this is on her 75/25 superwash merino nylon base in the fingering weight. Just super fun, colorful. I feel like it almost looks like it's on a yak base because the gray, it almost looks like the base is gray there, but I think it was just the background color. And I feel like I have a couple of things that might be a kind of fun, in the same vein, kind of fun, like fadey shawl kind of thing to do with it. No idea what this will become, but I like it. That was the only acquisition that I had, except for project plan stuff. So we'll go through all that next time. Have a fantastic Christmas if you celebrate. Have a fantastic mid-December if you're not celebrating Christmas. I'll be back with, I guess, one final, I have to look at the calendar, but I think one final episode before the new year. But I hope you take some time for yourself and get to spend it with friends and family, doing things that you love, and don't get too stressed out. It can be a really stressful time of the year for a lot of folks. I know it used to be for me, and one of the reasons why we don't really do much around the holidays anymore is because I was like, I'm just done with the stress of the holidays. So try to take some time for yourself and do something that you love. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.